Welcome to the Tudor Dixon Podcast. I am excited today because we have the founder of Auto Workers for Trump with us. He is a retired UAW member. And obviously, we want to talk about what happened. I'm in Michigan. As you know, Michigan was declared for Donald Trump. And so we want to talk to Brian Pannebecker here with us today. Thank you so much for joining me.
Glad to be here.
Absolutely. So for people who don't know you, they probably actually do know you because oftentimes Donald Trump would pull you up on stage during a rally and say, "Hey, Brian, come and talk to us about what's going on." And it seemed like you had an inside track on what was actually happening with the UAW workers, even though we were hearing from Shawn Fain, who is the leader of the union, saying, "Oh, Trump is a scab. Nobody's going to vote for him." What's your opinion of what really happened?
Well, I do have an inside track because I actually talked to the people out on the shop floor. Tudor, ever since Memorial Day this summer, we've been holding a Trump rally outside the UAW parking lot where all the hourly people park. And we timed it so we would be there at shift change when the biggest shift group of people would be coming out, which is the day shift. They get off typically around 1:30, 2 o'clock, 2:30. So we would set up about noon and stay there till 3 or 3:30. So we'd also catch some of the afternoon shift people coming in. And our main purpose for being there was twofold: to educate and to motivate the hourly workers at the auto plants, whether it was Ford, Chrysler, or General Motors, to vote for Donald Trump. And then the folks that weren't so sure that that was in their best interest, they were listening maybe to Shawn Fain's empty endorsement, we would try to educate them. And we had some good bullet point, half-page little bulletins with some of the main Trump 47 agenda items as they pertain to manufacturing and the auto industry in particular, so we could educate them. And I think we did do that, and we were able to bring quite a few UAW represented auto workers over into the Trump camp. So we did about 22 rallies over the course of the summer. We educated folks that needed more information to feel comfortable voting Republican in spite of the UAW leader's endorsement of Democrat. And we also motivated the folks that were there to make sure they got out and vote, got their families and neighbors out to vote. And I think we really did have an impact. As you probably know, Tudor, Trump only won Michigan by about 70,000 votes, somewhere in that neighborhood. And that, we feel we impacted tens of thousands of people because we're also getting traffic that was driving by these plants as we were out there for 3 hours. So we had all of our signs set up. We had our shirts and hats on. The Teamsters that were driving by in trucks were blaring their air horns, and it became a real motivational type thing. And I think we impacted the drive-by traffic because as these Teamsters were driving by, Tudor, and they got on their air horns, and people could see them pumping their fists in the air. They'd stick their arm out their windows and give us a thumbs up. Other cars that were in the traffic saw this going on. And then at shift change, we were getting auto workers blowing their horns, giving us thumbs up out their windows. And this was the majority of the people coming out of the parking lots. So the traffic driving by saw this happening. So we got some carryover benefit of the neighbors and, the community seeing the support of the auto workers for Trump. And I think we affected tens of thousands of votes. I honestly do.
So let me ask you this. How do you carry this on? And I know everybody's going to say, "Oh, we're just a few days out from the election." But of course, we're looking at 26, we're looking at 28, especially in the state of Michigan, because it went so blue the last time. Now everybody's like, "Oh, it went red." Well, as you pointed out, it was 70,000 votes. We lost the Senate seat. So there's in this state, that's a big deal that we won the presidency. But for some reason, that Senate candidate just didn't resonate with people. We did win the House back. So that it's kind of a split ticket here in Michigan.
Great question.
So people are saying, how do you keep that momentum going?
Great question. And I've already thought of it. When I woke up this morning and yesterday, one of the first thoughts that came into my head was, Donald Trump is already working. They're already on their transition. They've already got agenda items lined up. So as a surrogate, and I know you're a surrogate for Donald Trump as well, that's why this question pops into your head, and it popped into mine also. So first of all, I'll address Mike Rogers not holding on as those late Wayne County Detroit votes were counted. I think Mike was too late to fully endorse Donald Trump. I mean, he got on board, I don't know, 8-10 months ago, whatever it was, but there was a little hesitancy there. And I think the Trump
But did he
base,
ever fully? Because I would have to argue that I didn't see him ever really pushing that. I think he kind of ran parallel, and that I think should be a lesson to all Republicans moving forward.
So you just cut to that's the point I was going to try and make. So Mike was late coming to, associate himself with Donald Trump. So I think that's a lesson to be learned for any candidates in the 2026 election and beyond 2028. So Donald Trump has spent the last 8 years, maybe a little more, remaking the Republican Party. This is no longer the old Republican Party that had a lot of rhinos in it, maybe 50%. This is the MAGA Republican Party. So I would encourage all future candidates, and I hope I can include you in that list, Tudor, to associate yourself, fully endorse Trump's policies, marry yourself right to him, get on board, be part of that team. I know you already are, but there are some candidates out there who, up until 2 days ago, might have still been a little hesitant to get on board with Donald Trump 100%. And I think what happened to Mike Rogers is a lesson for them. Get on board with Trump. This is a new Republican party. Get fully behind Donald Trump. Get on board and just as you go forward in your own campaigns, stay married to Donald Trump, help him enact his agenda, and that'll be the biggest thing you can do to help your candidacy in the future.
Well, we need partners when you're in, no matter what state you're in, you need a partner in Washington. And it's interesting because I do think that there is a growing group of people that say we can just lose a few cycles and then he's gone and we'll be going back to the old Republican Party. But those voters are different. How can you possibly say that? The voters have changed. Yes. And the voters want change. They don't want this group controlled by the bureaucracy, which I think is what we've had for decades now. And that is the difference in Donald Trump. He changes things. He makes people go, okay, I don't know what he's going to do. He's his own person. He's the people. He's a person for the people. That's the difference. Yes. And I have seen since I got into politics, I've seen so many of these politicians that are like, you know what, I have to please and placate the donor class and they're going to tell me what to do and I have to do that. That was what you didn't see with Donald Trump. And I saw this in a few other candidates other than Mike Rogers here in Michigan. I'm sure in other states. For all of you in other states, pay attention. This probably happened to the people that lost in your states too, because we had a few state house candidates and a congressional candidate who just before the election, they were asked, well, what about Donald Trump? They literally said, in the news, it was quoted, you know what? I'm running my own race. We'll see how he does. And then that day we said they'll lose.
Yep. You're exactly right, Tudor. And as a small business owner, your family owning their own business for years, you totally understand that now we're moving into a phase where we have to govern, and government regulation is as big of a piece of the puzzle as taxes. Business taxes. So not only does Donald Trump and his team, his administration now need to work on keeping business taxes low. I think the small business tax now is 21%. Is that accurate? The corporate tax. He's talking about dropping that to 15%. But I think so that's the way.
And that's an interesting point because it's 15% if you are American based.
Correct.
So there's a motivator to keep your business in America and totally America first. And to me, that is critical. I think also something that you're pointing out here is these policies. You have to be careful to make sure that you are enacting these policies in your state too. So if you're in local government, if you're in state government, look at what is happening with government overregulation. Of course, we know here in the state of Michigan, it is completely out of control. It is crushing businesses. And now the Democrats have even come out with a new law that says they will force the companies to give PTO, paid time off, that the government will regulate. Can you imagine the government going into private corporations and regulating? And I just want to point out that what you're saying is so key, because we cannot allow these seats to go to Democrats, because as these seats go to Democrats, these radical, big regulation, big government Democrats, they elevate these people. That's how Kamala Harris failed up. You know, she came close because they failed her up. That's what's happening every time you lose these states. So when I hear somebody who is a donor, Democrats get money from all over. I mean, they win Michigan from New York and California. When I hear donors say we don't want to put money into Michigan, I'm like, do you want a Gretchen Whitmer, a Jocelyn Benson, or a Dana Nessel in D.C.?
Right. So luckily, we were able to retake one of the chambers here in Michigan in Lansing. I haven't seen the final results. I don't even know if everything's totally settled, but I know we're going to regain one of the chambers in our legislature here in Lansing. So we'll be able to put the brakes on the Gretchen Whitmer, Jocelyn Benson, Dana Nessel destruction of our business climate. So until 2026, we can at least put a stop to a lot of the stuff. They were on a real roll. They had done a lot of damage in the first 2 years in office. So until 2026, we're going to be able to at least put the brakes on good and hard. So getting back to my original point, government regulation is just a big piece of the puzzle. Lower taxes is the other half. And as you see from Donald Trump's pledge to continue with that effort to reduce business taxes, we have to get away from that narrative that businesses are the enemy and it's somehow wrong for businesses to make big profits. That's a good thing, because businesses making profits creates jobs and growth. And that's what we need.
And higher incomes.
A growing economy with growing incomes, a higher number of good paid jobs. So yeah, lower the business tax even further. The government that governs best governs least, and the lower we can get corporate taxes and still fund the essential components of our government, whether it's state or federal, the better.
So let me ask you about the auto companies here, because we have, I think it was just earlier today, one of the newspapers, probably the Detroit News, put out this story of like, what does this mean? Will the EV mandates be completely slashed under a Trump administration? What is the future for Michigan? And I would say that the future for Michigan without EV mandates is much brighter, because as the EV mandates have gone in, these auto workers or these auto companies have decided to build new factories, but they're not in Michigan. So What is your take on that, on the EV mandates?
Well, thanks for asking me that. And, you know, Tudor, a lot of folks who are not Detroit area or Michigan based people may not fully understand that the government's tentacles, the federal government, has become so oppressive that they were able to put these mandates on this industry, the domestic auto industry, without passing a law that comes out and says, you know, they proposed the Green New Deal, but through their the EPA and their environmental regulation and real strict standards, they forced the domestic automakers to build a certain percentage of their fleet as fully electric vehicles in order to meet the emission standards and the mileage standards. So it was sort of a surreptitious backdoor effort. So a lot of what Donald Trump and his administration are going to need to do will be with appointments to these federal departments that regulate industries. And it's all going to be part of Donald Trump's smaller government, less government regulation that's going to allow businesses, small businesses and corporations like the auto industry, to grow and expand. And we will get back to a more consumer-based supply and demand type of an economy. We cannot allow the federal government to stick their nose in and force the private businesses and industry to build certain type of products, like in the auto industry, where the consumers had already expressed their interest that they did not want to drive fully electric automobiles. So how in the world can the federal government force an industry to build products that the consumers have already said, we don't want those. It's suicide. And that would, China is going to jump all over that opportunity if that were to happen. Thank God it's not going to happen now under Donald Trump. It would have decimated our domestic auto industry.
So here, this is where what you're saying is so key, because, and this is where a president is so important. And this election was so important because you make a great point. The unelected bureaucrats put in a rule. It's essentially creating law without the lawmakers. None of these people have been elected. They don't represent the country. It is an agency within the government who came in. And this is how the Biden administration has used this, and Harris would have as well, is to use the agencies to create law and to manage people and to put on more regulation. And so they did this through the EPA. And then ultimately, it completely changed the capitalist society, the free market. No longer do we have a free market because of unelected bureaucrats that went in and said, hey, free market, you have to adhere to this rule.
Exactly.
This is a massive change because this is how every single one of us drives. And it's not just that, it's a massive expense and there is no infrastructure for it. I mean, that's the lie of the whole thing. There's no infrastructure. I love how the woman who won the Senate seat in Michigan, her ad was, I can't personally have an EV because I live on a dirt road. I'm like, what the heck are you saying? Do you have are you living by candlelight? What the heck? Give me a break. If we have to, you have to too.
Right.
But I want to address this because Pete Buttigieg has indicated that there's a chance he'll run for governor in the state of Michigan because obviously he's not going to be in the administration now. He's done a terrible job with transportation. He was a terrible mayor, but he wants to run for governor of the state of Michigan. Now, he was on Fox, I think, Monday, and he was asked about these mandates, and he bold-faced lied. Oh, there's no mandate. We're not telling people what car they have to drive. And no matter how he tried to trap him in the truth, he is a slippery guy. And he was like, no, nobody's telling you. Same thing Slotkin did. But a mandate is exactly that. They are mandating that by a certain date, we all have to have a certain car, which is probably $20,000 to $30,000 more than the cars we buy now. And then you have to add on the $5,000 to $10,000 change you have to make to your garage to be able to charge the thing. And if you can't do it, if you can't make that change, your car's not going to charge overnight to get you very far. I mean, it's all just ridiculous. But what is the future when now all these people disperse from Washington? They're going to come back into our states and they're going to try to implement these policies.
Well, we need somebody like Tudor Dixon to run against Pete Buttigieg in 2026 because you understand all that and you know how to cut Pete Buttigieg off on all those arguments. But yeah, it's a classic example, Tudor, of the elites in Washington, D.C. or Lansing, Michigan, for that matter, trying to tell the average people, the working people who pay the taxes, get up every day at 5 a.m., put work boots on and get in there and do the work, how we should live our lives. We're tired, Donald Trump being elected in an overwhelming mandate election. It shows that we are fed up. We're tired of being told how to live our lives, what products to buy, them keeping us from opening our businesses, being entrepreneurial, making money, and making a profit. They've turned profit and successful business into a bad word in Washington and Lansing. Well, it's not a bad word. Entrepreneurs, small businessmen are the risk takers, and they're the people who should be proud of America and the freedoms and liberties we have in this country, and we're taking it back.
And those small businesses are who support the auto industry. So in the state of Michigan, many of our small business owners are creating products that go into the auto industry. And so when we see what happened just before the election, where Ford came out and said, you know what, we're going to temporarily, and they're saying temporarily,
They ran out of storage room. They ran out of storage lots around Detroit to park them on. They can't get them to the dealership. If you live here,
it's amazing to see what you're talking about. I think people don't know what you're talking about.
Exactly.
There's these lots that are just filled with vehicles.
Thousands of vehicles sitting. They can't sell them.
How do you force a company to make a product nobody wants? And this is the problem. But We pay for this. The taxpayers, that's the really disgusting part about it. And I think the part people really don't understand is that every year, hundreds of millions of dollars of taxpayer money go into these big corporations. And we're paying for this transition to electric vehicles. It's not working. So then the auto workers get laid off the middle of November through January. And that's like what we think. We think they'll be back in January. What a crappy time of year to lose your job.
Absolutely. And Tudor, isn't it ironic that the Democrats like to demonize big corporations, especially when they're making a lot of money? You know, they don't mention the fact that when they're making a lot of money, a lot of people are working overtime and pouring money back into our local economies. They don't want to talk about that part of it. But it's very ironic that these companies are the boogeyman for them a lot of the times. But when they want to offer a $500 million tax credit to get them to build a specific product, in this case, fully EV vehicles, then all of a sudden it's okay to give money to these big corporations like they always criticize Republicans for doing when they give a tax break to an industry. So they're just hypocrites. It's another example of Democratic hypocrisy. We see it all the time.
Hey, look, the state of Michigan, we were all supposed to get an income tax reduction. And that didn't happen. But I see billionaires every day getting money out of Lansing. And check your own states, too, because watch the people who are actually taking your money and giving it to people who have more. I mean, these are people that are on the Forbes list as the richest people in the world. And we're giving them our money. And then who's overseeing how that money is spent? And I know this sounds radical, but it is. This is your money. You should have it back. The fact that Americans are giving their money away for these projects that are test projects. I mean, this is like out in space. What do we think we could possibly do? We don't have any chargers. There's no infrastructure for this. Let's see if it works. It's baloney. And yet it continues to happen every single day. So I just want to get your opinion, because when we look at this plant was in Dearborn. We had a massive Arab American vote come out. And to me, this is very interesting because these fellas came to my rally when I was running for governor. And we had about 4 or 5 men from the Dearborn area come to my rally. And they were like, man, this was the first time we were really introduced to the fact that these are conservative values, conservative values that mean something to us too. I think it goes beyond the conservative values, because Dearborn's where this plant is being shut down. A lot of these people are small business owners. They have restaurants, they have markets, they have gas stations. They come in and they invest in their community in a big way. But the only way they are successful is that the big factories continue running around them. So they see what's happening in Michigan and they're like, who is giving these? Who is at the EPA that's saying we're going to control the free market? Because that's a disaster. Do you think that moved Arab Americans?
100%. Not only are the Arab Americans a great cultural fit in the Republican Party, economically it makes a lot of sense because, like you just alluded to, many of the Arab American community members of the community here in the Dearborn area are business owners. So they know better than anyone how government regulation, high taxes, and an anti-business mood in Lansing affects them. It affects them directly, and then it affects their surrounding communities. So it was beautiful to see Trump increase his percentage of the Jewish vote while at the same time bringing these Muslim and Arab American voters like from Hamtramck, Dearborn Heights, getting the endorsement of these mayors and hearing their endorsements, how their communities are waking up to the fact that Republicans and the new Republican Party, the MAGA Republican Party, fit so well with their family values, their work ethic, their community sense of community. And so it's amazing for me to see them coming into the fold for Republicans at the same time Trump was increasing his vote among Jewish Americans. It's kind of ironic, but it's a beautiful thing to see. And I think a lot of that also goes back to the peace and prosperity message of Donald Trump. Arab Americans want peace. as well as prosperity, and so do Jewish voting Americans. So that's something that can appeal to a broad cross-section of our community, even into the Arab and Jewish communities here in Michigan around the Dearborn area.
Right. And I think that people who are waking up today and still saying, how did this happen? They have to understand that peace sells. Peace is big. Everybody wants peace.
Always.
Everybody wants more money in their pocket. Those were policies that Donald Trump was not mincing words on. Very clear. This is what I will bring. And he had evidence to back it up because of the Abraham Accords. This idea of running a campaign on joy is meaningless. That's meaningless. Joy doesn't pay your bills. Joy doesn't keep your relatives safe overseas. Joy is not it's not a real thing. It's a feeling. We have got to be able to bring back peace and prosperity, peace in the world, prosperity in the country. And that is what Donald Trump promised. And we appreciate every single day you were out there with him. Every single day you had those rallies. That was so meaningful. And that's what we have to continue. So I know you will. I know that even after this administration, when there's a new person running for president, I know you're going to continue those rallies when it is the MAGA base and getting them out and bringing more people on. Brian Pannebecker, thank you so much for being on today.
Thank you, Tudor. I look forward to working alongside you for the next 2 years, 4 years. We've got a bright future ahead of us. Donald Trump is going to do great things, and I'm really looking forward to it.
Yes, he will. And so will you. Thank you so much. And thank you all for joining us on the Tudor Dixon Podcast. For this episode and others, go to TudorDixonPodcast.com or the iHeartRadio app, Apple Podcasts, or wherever you get your podcasts. And join us next time on the Tudor Dixon Podcast. Have a blessed day.